I had the Bacchanal buffet at Caesar's on my last day in Vegas on one of my yearly trips. I was fine until I got on the plane. I had to shit so bad, and it was going to be diarrhea. However, we were racing a storm, so the flight attendants asked everyone to remain seated so we could leave. I begrudgingly agreed with my insides on fire. 25 minutes after sitting waiting to take off, they announced we'd have to taxi back and go from the opposite direction for a wind shift. It was another 30-minute delay. Then we finally get into the air and fly right into the storm. It was turbulent and would last another 10 minutes. The seatbelt sign was on, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. Finally went to go shit. I exploded as soon as I got in there. Everyone in the back of the plane could smell it when I opened the door. One guy even called me out on it. Oh well, my fault for eating oysters on a buffet.
Had one of those random, inexplicable sugar cravings. Went to the shop. Imagine giving a particularly sweet-toothed toddler 20 pounds and setting them loose with no restrictions. That's probably what my basket looked like. I joined the queue for the self-checkouts, and just when it was almost my turn, one of the staff opened a till and called me over. I suddenly felt incredibly self-conscious. As a general rule, I'm not overly concerned with what people think of me, but for some reason in this particular moment, I felt like I really didn't want her judging my fat ass while I handed her one sugary treat after another. I turned to the person behind me and said, "You can go ahead if you like," but she declined. I insisted, "No, honestly, I don't mind." But she was determined to make this as awkward as possible. At this point, the security guard wandered over and pointed me towards the newly opened till. I now had quite a lot of people staring at me. I looked at the woman behind me again and said, No. Honestly, I need to, get more stuff anyway," and brushed past her as though that had been my intention all along and not something I had just made up on the spot. I went to the aisle furthest from the tills and pretended to peruse the shelves with intense interest until I was confident the rush had died down and I'd be able to get to a self-checkout unmolested. Not my finest moment. Since then, the security guard has made a point of following me every time I'm in there. I'm sure he thought I was insistent on using the self-checkout because I wanted to steal something, rather than just because I was embarrassed about having a bag full of kids' sweets.
Just last night, in a restaurant with my family. We had had some friendly, much as I hate the word, banter with the waitress throughout. Like she asked how everything was, and I said, "Very nice, thanks." She replied, "You haven't even tried any yet, you liar." I hadn't, she was right, it was funny. Several other just nice little interactions. So when my mum said, "Does anyone have room for dessert?" I said, "I do if they have cannolis." The waitress overheard and said, "We do have them." She went away to get menus. When she came back, I waved mine away, saying, "Pfft, I don't need one. Cannolis," in a duh, obviously way. The waitress said, okay," and gave the rest of my family menus and left. It wasn't the waitress who had been waiting on us all evening. It was a different waitress who had not previously interacted with us at all. I apologized profusely to both. I usually love awkward humor, but wanted the ground to swallow me up.
My time to shine. A couple of things to know beforehand. I'm highly neurodivergent. My brain and my body don't really communicate that well. I'm on the chubby side of dad bod. I had an appointment to get my shoulder checked out as I've been having problems with calcific tendonitis. The nurse was examining me and pressing on various muscle groups to see how they compare on each side. Meanwhile, I'm concentrating extra hard on being in tune with my shoulder so I can accurately convey where the pains and ailments are situated. This means I'm concentrating way less on controlling my inner monologue. She was pressing along my chest, and I absent-mindedly, but as comedically as I could, curled my arms in as if flexing my non-existing pecs and went, "Gah!" She took a step back and said, "Okay then." I apologized profusely and explained my outburst. She was cool about it, and saw the funny side, reassuring me. She's had much worse happen during examinations?
I was working at a skating rink as a DJ and used to throw on my skates to mingle with customers. One of my skate moves was to drop down into the splits and pull myself back up, like this scene Michael Jackson's Bad music video. One evening, a regular rink rat child asked me to do the splits. I obliged him, dropped down into the splits position. However, this time, I didn't come back. Fast forward to having my pants cut off by EMT and being given morphine on the skate floor, while customers continued to skate before being taken to the hospital. I had dislocated my patella. The story doesn't stop there because the skating rink's GM stopped into the hospital to check on me, and I found it slightly odd that he rotated awkwardly from across the open space in the room to around the bed, cutting through the medical machines, almost knocking them over, and cables to stand against the gap in the wall to talk to me by my head. Being doped up, I did not realize at the time that my patient gown was thrown open, and he saw all of my business. TLDR. I did the splits on purpose on roller skates and dislocated my kneecap. While on the clock, boss might have seen my junk.
When I was 26 or so, my brother and I planned to meet up with my dad at a high school basketball game once. Showed up, saw my dad in his familiar spot, standing along the railing, looking down on the court from above. Even when facing away, dude's easy to pick out of a lineup on account of his signature olive green winter coat, faded blue jeans, and Air Monarchs. Thought I'd mess with him by going up and just standing uncomfortably close to his body until he noticed my presence. He gets locked into basketball, so he didn't acknowledge me at first, so I got ever closer. He finally turned around. Wasn't my dad. I looked 15 feet to my left, where my dad and brother looked on, bemused, befuddled, and disappointed. Began apologizing profusely to the stranger I'd accosted, but couldn't string words together well, so I just began pointing at him, and then at my dad, and then back. Graciously, the stranger in question acknowledged that he and my father were wearing the same dad uniform, and he smiled and nodded his head in understanding, which only made things slightly less embarrassing.
I wasn't very popular in high school, so I never really got invited to the big parties. Well, one day, my friend who was friends with the popular kids got invited to a party at one of their houses, and he brought me. A lot of the people who I thought were stuck up turned out to be really nice and offered me free beer. So anyway, it's like an hour into this party, and someone's dad owned a pizza joint in the town and had a bunch of pizzas delivered. I was hammered off of like 3 beers, so I chowed down. About another hour goes by and I had to shit really bad, so I told my friend we should leave soon. Unfortunately for me, he was trying to get laid, and as high school teens, I couldn't stop him. Plus, he drove. So I tried to pinch it off for another hour or two, but I had a few more beers. This is before I knew what beer does to your stomach. And I needed to shit. Like, it was one of those ones where you can feel it almost poking out from any change in pressure in your bowels. So I went to the bathroom. One person was in there, so I decided to wait. But it was some drunk chick throwing up, so a line started forming, and it was nothing but the hot chicks from school. Then it was my turn, but I couldn't look at everyone and be like, never mind when I just waited 20 minutes to go. I finally got inside and took the craziest dump of all time. Like it poked out of the water. Easily 16 Keurig. I tried to put soap in the toilet and spray the air, but nothing helped. I left, and I could tell the girl that went in behind me instantly knew what happened. She made that disgusted face that you only make when you smell shit. Anyway, I find my buddy and basically drag him out of the party, and we go home. He was pissed saying I cock-blocked him, but he and that chick never did anything ever again, so I didn't feel too bad later on. And that's my most embarrassing story, or how I never got invited to another party in high school.
This story was a mixture of embarrassment and fear, but mostly embarrassment. I lived in Alaska for several years, and something that happens there moderately often is earthquakes and their aftershocks. So one day I was at work. I think I maybe was 24 or 25, and an earthquake starts to rattle. Just a little shake at first. Really common stuff. Nothing to get concerned about. There was silence for about 10 seconds or so, then boom. My work building starts shaking like what you've seen in the movies. I thought the whole place was coming down around me, and rightfully so. I believe this particular quake was about 7.5 or 7.7 on the Richter, which Alaska hadn't seen for several years at that point. Now, there's 3 important points to this story. The first is that in Anchorage, most of the tall buildings are equipped with earthquake rollers, which in layman terms makes the buildings sway in the air during earthquakes so they don't just instantly fall over or crumble. They're highly effective, but the sway is very, very noticeable and frightening. Think of being on a ship in the middle of a storm. The second important point is that I have extreme earthquake anxiety. As in, when a tremor hits, no matter the size, I will freak the fuck out. Hyperventilation, shivering, shouting, can't calm down when it's over for a while. It's not nice. The third and definitely most important point of this story is that during this particular quake, I was on the top 6th floor of my office building, and I was in the bathroom, literally taking a shit on the toilet. When the quake started, my butt just blasted everything out in a matter of seconds. I won't lie, it hurt afterwards, but I was now in the fear has taken over mode and trying to escape for my life. No time to wipe, no time to wash anything. I hastily pulled up whatever I could and pushed my way out of the stall. The rollers I mentioned before were already working their magic, and in a tremendous exit, I fell right on the bathroom floor face first. Lights are flickering and ceiling tiles are starting to fall around me. I'm doing whatever I can do, just get to the bathroom door and get out. I inch my way across the floor and finally push my way out. But I knew I was getting out of the building. This earthquake was going to kill me. I laid myself in the hallway, full fetal position, shaking and shouting, pants down to my ankles, and the swaying slowed and eventually stopped, and everything was very quiet. It was literally 15 seconds of mayhem, but it was over now. I began to stand up and sort myself out, and as I turn around in the hallway, what do I see but 4 or 5 of my co-workers sitting on the floor also rearranging themselves from the quake, and all of them were looking me over. I went back into the restroom very quickly, pulled my pants up, waiting a god 5 minutes for good measure, and went home. Next day, no one said anything about the whole experience, and we all just moved on with our lives. But ooh.
I've told this story on Reddit before. Not sure if it was my most embarrassing, but certainly in the top 5. I was about 14. Don't remember my exact age, although I could reverse engineer it. I had never kissed a girl, never really had a girlfriend. I was a gawky and introverted nerd living in a little town. Didn't have many friends, and not all that crazy about most of the few I did have. I was the smartest kid in my class, but scrawny and unathletic. In the span of a few years, I had somehow gone from being one of the cool kids in my grade to being one of the people who are mostly ignored by the cool kids. I felt alone and isolated most of the time. My older brother gets married, and they have a major wedding reception at her parents' house, in a town about 10 miles away from my hometown. 2 bars, no one cares if kids are drinking. This house is an old mansion in a hick town in the Midwest, has about 20 rooms. I've had some drinks and am feeling good when someone tells me that one of the bridesmaids has a little sister my age who thinks I'm cute. I eventually find her, it's a huge party, and we chat for a bit and hit it off. She's cute and seems bright and funny and nice. I have visions of having a real girlfriend for the first time. I feel like this could be a turning point in my life. I've met a cool girl, and she actually seems to like me. Between the alcohol buzz and the unexpected situation, I feel like a little kid who has come downstairs on Christmas morning and found everything he wants under the tree, plus a bunch of other great stuff he didn't even know existed. We roam off, holding hands, and find an empty room. We sit on a little couch and talk some more. Finally, I work up my nerve and I kiss a girl for the first time in my life, and she pukes in my mouth and runs out of the room.
I posted this in TIFU, but will share here too. I was at a week-long training in another city with a co-worker for peer support certification. Basically working with people who have addiction, behavioral struggles, who need casual, friendly assistance with a variety of things. We had one of those break the ice exercises on day one. I ran to the bathroom while they explained it, and when I got back, people were writing on note cards. I asked my coworker what they were doing, and she said, "Write a secret." The job deals with a lot of emotions and personal experiences with addiction, and mental health struggles are a plus, so I thought this was some soul-searching exercise or something, like we'd burn them at the end or some dramatic shit. I write that I feel like a terrible father and sometimes regret having kids. I fold it up and then pocket it. Then I hear, "Okay, I'm going to collect them now." I'm thinking, is this a trust thing? Okay, whatever. He then puts them all in a bucket and shakes it. Fuck. So he pulls the first card and it reads, "I was bit by a shark." And everyone points to this one guy and he's like, "Ah, you got me." Then he reads more. And these are some weak secrets, I'm thinking. Never been to Canada, I was in a movie, etc. After each one, the group identifies the writer. Of course, mine is the last fucking one, and my coworker goes, "I guess we know who this one is." I had to sit and listen to this dude read my secret to a room full of silent, stunned people. Turns out we were supposed to write a fun fact and my coworker misworded it. Fucker. Oh man, I've had many embarrassing moments in life. Most of my stories revolve around my impeccable digestive tract. Recently, my in-laws were visiting us. We decided to go to this park up in the mountains, the kind of park you could only access via ski lift. Anywho, we are walking around the park when all of a sudden I feel my stomach make a rumble sound. I try to casually pass gas as respectfully as I can in a crowded walkway. Mind you, we're waking through a starlight attraction. There's lots of people and it's drizzling, which makes the trail slippery. When we get close to the end of the trail, I couldn't hold it any longer. Mind you, it's a solid 10-minute walk uphill, which was very steep to the nearest restroom, which happened to be 3 small stalls in a camper type thing. By the time I get there, I've got the sweats going on. If you've never had the poop sweats, I'm envious of you. Needless to say, I blew that bathroom up. I was in there for 20 minutes, full of shame as each unsuspecting woman would come in and make comments about how bad it smelled in there. Unfortunately, this was my fault. Or make a sound reminiscent of a PU with a sigh. Anywho, while I sit there, sweaty and ashamed, my spouse texts me wondering how much longer I'll be as my in-laws are now outside waiting for me. I begged my wife to take them to another area of the park. When I finally finished, I started panicking as I couldn't find the way to flush the toilet. Turns out the flusher was on the floor and you stepped on it. Huzzah! I waited until I could no longer hear anyone else in the bathroom, washed my hands and got the heck out of there. However, due to being so sweaty and the way I had just disappeared from our group, everyone in the family was adamant about asking me if I was okay and if I needed anything. I couldn't bring myself to tell them the reason why I looked so disheveled was because I had to poop.
The only one I care to share is from 1986? Or so, age 16-ish. I was, let's call it pretty flamboyantly punk androgynous for a dude at the time and very sensitive about being misgendered. Though we didn't have that concept then, I promise this will be relevant later. At a Vancouver Canucks hockey game with my dad versus the Edmonton Oilers, so King Gretzky days. He had an impressive night. Haha, okay, back to story. Pre-game carrying snack tray with drinks towards our seats. This was when people still smoked cigarettes everywhere, and somebody walking past accidentally burned my arm with their cig. I reflexively yelled, "Fucker!" and flinched hard, flinging all the drinks and hot dogs all over the people walking in front of us. Dudes spun around ready to pound me, but my awesomely soft-spoken pastor dad immediately stepped in front and managed to defuse stuff pretty quickly, and the dude ended up laughing and shaking our hands. Props to some Canadian stereotypes re good-natured ease. This dude looked like Paul Bunyan's big brother. Of course, people had stopped to watch as soon as I'd yelled, "Fucker" at the top of my lungs, in front of my pastor dad, who I've never heard actively use a swear word. But people seemed to grok what had happened. Except one little kid who his dude was walking away yells out, "Daddy, that girl peed her pants." And remember, I'm a sensitive dude, causing a new batch of passers-by to wheel and stare. I hadn't noticed that the massive splashback had made it look perfectly like I'd pissed a gallon in my orange jeans. Almost as bad was when we got to our seats and Reverend Dad asked me, "Fucker? Really?" Oh, Dad, my filthy mouth was the very least of things you should have been worried about back then.
Probably the time I accidentally peed myself right before I could reach the toilet in first grade. More context, I was having lunch and suddenly I had to pee super bad. I'm not sure why. If I had to guess, maybe it's because I forgot to pee that morning before I went to school. Anyway, I thought I could hold it until I was done with lunch. As I was leaving, I passed by a bathroom that we were told we weren't allowed to use cause that's the sixth grader's bathroom. And again, I thought I could hold it. I went past my locker and decided to put away my lunchbox first, again thinking I could still hold it because it would just take a moment. Well, the stupid lunchbox didn't want to stay in place and kept falling down again and again and again. So I got fed up and decided to just throw it in there and slam the door as fast as I could. Well, it fell down again before I could shut it, and I bent the locker door closing it. I stopped once or twice heading to the first grader's bathroom because I was wondering if I should try to fix it first. I didn't like half the locker sticking out like that because I had bullies and figured they'd want to mess with it if they saw that. But then I was like, whatever, I gotta pee. At this point, it's obvious I made several mistakes, but to be fair, I had never peed myself in a public place before, so I didn't think it was a problem. Anyway, I scrambled into the bathroom going as fast as I could, shut the door, and soon as I turned around, the pee shot out of me. I didn't even get a chance to pull my pants down. I froze and didn't know what to do because no one told us what to do if we have an accident. I figured I had to tell someone but didn't want to go to them with wet pants. I took them off but then realized I can't go up to someone half naked in a school, so I put them back on. This was during recess, so I spent the whole time in the bathroom trying to figure out what to do, and I couldn't figure it out. At some point, I ran out of ideas and just stood there staring at the mess and frozen. That all wasn't even the worst part. Suddenly, when recess was over, someone came into the bathroom, they stopped, covered their mouth, and started laughing. They left, came back with their friend, and they both were laughing. Then they left and came back with one or two more, rinse and repeat. Soon half the girls in my class were in there laughing at me. Finally, the teacher came in and was all like, "What's going on?" And she made them go back to class and helped me get some fresh clothes. But seriously, who the hell thinks something like that is even funny? Part of me hopes they got in trouble for laughing at me, but I don't think they did. They should have. I just can't understand why someone would laugh at that, and not just one person.
It's long. It starts really slowly. Bear with it, it's eventually worth it. Backstory. My job has me working from home. Home was fine, but wife and I decided if you can live anywhere, why not someplace fun? We were able to find a waterfront place in middle of nowhere, Florida, with a dock and boat lift. Not expensive, since as I mentioned, it is in fact in the dead center of nowhere. After about 4 years of enjoying the fishing during the days, as an experiment, wife and I turned on the light at the end of the dock and I tossed the bait net at about 10 p.m. Up came about half a dozen large shrimp. Tossed again, same result. Virtually every throw brings up shrimp. We can't stop, this is great. Much later we realize it's now 1 a.m. We have pounds and pounds of delicious shrimp, so fresh they are kicking. But no ice to hold them till morning. I need to go buy ice. In town, Pop 2000, is an automated ice dispensary where you stick in money and a 20-pound bag of ice drops out. I'm dressed for cast netting, a swimsuit, t-shirt, sandals. After netting for hours, the shirt is much too fishy for the car, so I take off the shirt, sit on a towel so my wet shorts don't foul the seat, and drive to the ice house. No one will see me at 1:30 a.m. in middle of nowhere at the off-road ice house, or care if they do. Ice house money taker machine is broken. No ice from there. The all-night gas station / convenience store on the highway through town is open, and they sell ice. As I walk to the door, I see the sign, no shirt, no shoes. But I have to have ice. I step inside. The counter is manned by 2 ladies. I'm sorry I'm not properly dressed, but something has come up and I have an unexpected, sudden, and desperate need for a couple of bags of ice. Can I please buy ice dressed like this? Or must I go get a shirt and come back? Smile, thinking, please, 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 just sell me the ice. They look me over and evidently decide that it's boring working the wee hours in a town where no one is out at night. play me for a little bit first. Hun, you can come in any time like that. That sign is just for the nasty old oysterman. Come on in, stay a while. What in the world do you need ice for at this time of night anyway? Etc., etc. Eventually, I told them the required number of jokes. They took my money and I got my ice. One would think that was embarrassing, but that's just because you don't yet have the ultimate embarrassment benchmark, which follows. A couple of days later, Saturday morning, wife and I are driving out of town. We stop in the same store to get coffee and a couple of chicken biscuits. The place is packed, bustling, loud, and all they have left for breakfast is hot wings and corn dogs. I get coffee and get in the long line. At the counter is one of the ladies from a couple of nights ago. Harried voice. Did you find everything you were looking for? Well, I was hoping for 2 chicken biscuits, but I see you've had a really busy morning. Just the coffee will do, thanks. Sudden interest. Hey, I don't recognize you, but I know your voice from somewhere. Ice at 1:30 in the morning. Face lights up, shouts to backroom. Hey, it's our fun, wet guy. Except now he's wearing clothes, and he needs a couple of chicken biscuits. Place falls dead silent, and I can feel every single set of eyes locking on me speculatively. From the back, oh lordy, we are all out, but tell him to hang on. I'll put together something somehow. After an amazingly short, but eternally long 1 minute, in which not a single soul in the store said a word or moved a muscle, the other lady comes out with 2 hot chicken biscuits. I smile, thank them both, pay, and leave. At the door, I glance back. Every soul is still rooted in place, watching me leave. Even the next person in line has not stepped forward yet. The only motion is the 2 ladies enthusiastically waving bye-bye. And that is why we have to move out of state.
First time getting frozen yogurt, I dumped a full cup of frozen yogurt out onto the metal grate, thinking it was like a soda fountain. Everyone stared at me, and I just scooped it back into my cup in shame. My first time at a frozen yogurt place. I was a sophomore or junior in high school, and we were on a trip for marching band. Went into a mall for lunch, and me and my group were drawn by a lady giving samples outside the door into this frozen yogurt place. I'd never been to one, and I was overwhelmed by all the flavors, so many delish choices. I pulled the lever and filled my cup up with one flavor and realized, oh, that flavor looks good too. And without even thinking, I dumped my cup out onto the metal grate under the lever. In my head, I was going what I did when I wanted a different drink at the McDonald's soda fountain. You just dump it and get a different one. The room goes quiet, and I look around, and the lady who had been giving samples is staring at me with her jaw open, and I realize I've made a mistake. Oh, was I not supposed to do that? My friends, these particular friends I was very insecure about, I always felt like they thought I was stupid, were like, "What are you doing? Why would you do that? Oh my God, we can't take you anywhere." I was trying to do damage control, and I was like, "It's fine, no problem. I'll just scoop this up then." And I scooped up the melting blob of frozen yogurt into my cup, with everyone staring at me, and my one friend is apologizing to the lady at the door on my behalf. The worst part is that my friend knew I didn't have money and offered to buy mine before we even went in. So after this whole fiasco, my yogurt's up there with his, and he's paying for the yogurt I dumped out and then scooped back up. Everyone that was there made fun of me the rest of the day, and it actually almost made me cry, and I definitely did cry later.
When I was in the 3rd grade, my mom went through a cooking phase where the diet was mostly comprised of beans. Having consumed said beans for dinner most nights, one can easily imagine the affects that said beans had on the small child I was at the time. One day, during an unfortunately long lesson by my Hebrew school teacher, my pencil rolled from the top of my desk to the floor. Now, this would not usually have been a problem, except I could not bend down to get it, since I was holding back a rather large amount of evaporated bean gas, and the mere act of bending to get the pencil would have risked releasing said biological weapon unto all in the classroom. Unfortunately, I had no other pencils and decided to cut my losses. Now I have always been a very modest person. I've always tried to hide my bodily functions in polite, non-distracting manners, but the fart born of unholy beans released on that day could have shook the gods from their sleep. It sounded like an elementary school band contrived entirely of trumpets and kazoos, like hundreds of elephants muttering to one another, like a steamroller crushing a clown car full of killer bees. And the class went dead silent. You do not know how slow time moves until you're half bent over, reaching for a pencil while the Lord's loudest trumpet blasts from the bean-tainted crevices of your behind. It was like my ass was playing a solo at Carnegie Hall, and the Hebrew school teacher, in all her wisdom, said, "Class, do not laugh. Bodily functions are natural." I was not very popular after that.
I'm doubly incontinent, bladder and bowel. A couple weeks ago, I ate something that disagreed with me, or had a stomach bug or something. Ended up having multiple bowel accidents that day. I've mostly got my body trained to go in the morning, so if I do have a bowel accident during the day, it's almost always before showering and dressing for the day. I had one when I got out of the car to do grocery shopping. That's fine. I grabbed my stealth diaper bag, just a backpack with some changes in it, and changed in the bathroom before shopping. A couple hours later, I was waiting in line at Costco and had another one. I finished up, got out to the car, and put everything away, and grabbed my diaper bag to go change in the bathroom. Took off the dirty diaper only to find I'd used my last fresh diaper earlier in the day at the grocery store. Ransacked the backpack to see if I had anything I could make a makeshift diaper out of, but the spare clothes inside were socks and a pair of blue jeans, neither of which would do an amazing job at soaking up anything. Judging from how often the pull-ups I put on after showering before I can change into a diaper are, I'm probably going to wet myself in the next 5 to 10 minutes. I can't actually tell when I'm wetting myself as long as I'm suitably protected. If I'm not, I feel leaks, and that lets me know. So I stick the socks inside the plastic pants I've been wearing over my diapers since I started having bowel issues, and start walking back to my car. I'm maybe halfway there before I can feel that the makeshift diaper has already leaked. I have absolutely no idea how bad my pants look, but I'm dripping onto the parking lot. I grab a rain jacket from my trunk and set it on my seat to sit on, and then drive the 20 minutes home. Got stuck behind a train on the way home, so it's closer to an hour before I'm able to get home, by which time my lower half is absolutely soaked. I'm not actually sure the rain jacket did much at all for protecting the seat. I went in through the back door and undressed in the garage to minimize how much dripping there'd be on the carpeted areas of the house and rushed to my room to put on a new diaper. Luckily, roommate was still at work, and I didn't have another bowel accident until later in the day.
PI was new in town, everyone knew everyone from elementary school, and I was the outcast, terrified of middle school and also of not knowing anyone. Crippled by the social anxiety of knowing everyone else was familiar with everyone else and I was all alone, feeling like everyone could tell. Let it be known, I was a good kid, quiet, not ugly, but not pretty, didn't have trendy clothes or anything, in a relatively well-off suburb. I wasn't the kind of kid who raised their hand. In fact, I tried to pretend like I didn't exist for the most part. I felt like I stuck out and wanted desperately to be invisible. There was a trio of girls in my homeroom who decided they didn't like me for some unknown reason. A set of twin girls, Miranda and someone else B. The leader was a cunt named Molly. Molly was this ugly troll-hearted thing with a curly dark cloud of hair, something like a fro for a white girl, and glasses. I wasn't one to pick on people for appearances, but I suspect she chose me to pick on for appearances since I had a noticeable lazy eye. So I don't feel bad for considering her a hypocrite for judging my looks. I never spoke to these girls, never sat near enough to them. I don't know why they came after me. Whenever Molly, mini big comfy couch bitch, started in on me, the twins flocked to her and laughed along. I tried my best to ignore it. No one ever said anything, and I don't know how teachers never noticed. I don't remember much from that year except for the worst thing. So, it was gym. Many middle schoolers' worst part of school, namely the changing room. I was a slightly late bloomer, I guess. The other girls had bras, even if they were barely an A cup. Not me. I lived with my dad and didn't have the best home life. I was embarrassed. I didn't dress for gym hardly because of it. One day, the anxiety of getting yelled at and singled out for not dressing won over the anxiety of dressing in my gym uniform. That day, it was laundry day, so I was forced to go to school. I wearing a last resort item, a hand-me-down Old Navy woven sweater that for some god-forsaken reason had a strangely small neck hole. I tried to tug off my sweater as fast as I could to yank on my gym shirt just as fast to get it over with, so maybe no one would see me. If I was wearing an undergarment at all, it was this cheap training bra thing that really offered no coverage. Definitely no padding. My nipples would still poke through. But I'm not even confident I was wearing that. I was likely bare-chested under my sweater. Well, the gods hated me when I was young because my sweater got a bit stuck going over my head. So Molly, of course, sees me, seizes her chance and grabs my sweater, yanks me down on the ground so I'm on my knees, and starts dragging me down the row of lockers by my sweater, still over my head, while I'm on my knees. So much laughter. The twins were there, laughing. Everything else is a blur. To my knowledge, no one said anything to her. I don't think the teacher was in the locker room at the time. They never stayed in there the whole time, I guess, because of the dressing, even though the teacher was a woman. Molly and her groupies still continued to pick on me after that. I don't know how I didn't hide in the bathroom and burst into tears. I guess because I knew that if I did, they would know why I wasn't out with the rest of class, and I didn't want them to think they'd gotten to me. But it did. I still don't know why me. I would still like to find that bitch one day and let her know how much of a garbage person she was for literally no reason, though. It's the most embarrassing thing I've ever been through, mainly because it was done on purpose to be cruel. Don't be a Molly.
Grab your popcorn, this is a goodie. TLDR at bottom. About 10 years ago, I decided to get weight loss surgery. Well, in order to have it done, I had to go through a series of tests throughout the span of 6 months. One of these tests was only available at a hospital about an hour away from me at 6 o'clock in the morning, meaning I'd not only have to drive an hour, but there'd also be a bit of Chicago morning traffic. So, being the smart person I am, I decide that I should just pull an all-nighter instead of getting like 5 or 5 hours. So it's 4 in the morning, it's cold, it's raining, there's traffic. In short, things are starting out great. I get to the hospital and I'm told I need to take off all of my clothing, underwear included. Which any self-conscious overweight, mid-20s woman will tell you is just what they love doing. I'm asked which size gown. We have regular and large. Well, I'm here with the main goal in mind of reducing my size, so I'm obviously a big person. So I say, large. All by my lonesome, naked, and holding this gown that actually looks like a blanket, I discover that when they say large, it's meant for someone who's several hundred pounds overweight, not just 100. Now dressed in nothing but a blanket that is held together by 2 strings in the back, which might as well not even be there for all the good it's doing me. I am told to stand in this machine while I'm scanned or whatever. Okay, now turn to your side. Now your other side. Now your back. Now your front. While all of this is going on, I notice not just the 2 technicians that are in the room with me, but on the other side of that glass, there is a gaggle of, I'm presuming, students to watch the procedure. And while I'm noticing that one technician, the female, is asking me questions. And while that is going on, I'm still doing all those turns, which has caused my blanket gown to come fully open. Are you pregnant? No. Are you sure? Yes. How are you sure? I'm at my breaking point, so I scream, because I've never had sex with a man. Side note, guys and gals, I am a gold star lesbian, so while I have known the gentle touch of a lover, it wasn't a man. So here we are. I am an overweight woman with all of her rolls of fat for not just these 2 to see, but the half a dozen lucky students to see as well. And I have just screamed out what everyone can only come to the conclusion of, I am ugly and pathetic and fat. And the cherry on top is that because of that, I am also a virgin. Dead silence. The male technician either took pity on me or couldn't hold his vomit in much longer, because he proceeded to wrap the gown several times around me and tie it closed. TLDR. How I screamed at a room full of people that I was a pathetic virgin.
I may have been 12 to 13 and was very busty at a young age. Had to be D's. My mom and sister are only in A-cups, and I lived with my dad. I never had any help finding proper fitting bras and swimsuits because of this. It's embarrassing enough to try and talk to your dad about any changes in your body as a kid, let alone a girl. I also wasn't very popular, and my school was super, super small. So there was also no assistance there either. For clarity, there was less than 200 kids in K-8 and less than 100 in 9-12. My entire class grade was 30 kids total, with only 8 being girls. Anyway, to the embarrassment. I had to travel a ways to get to the closest public pool if I wanted to go swimming. I got my stuff together and rode my bike to the pool, which was 11 miles away in a super hilly area and windy as well. It's very rural up there. I did this because I liked the challenge and also because my father was a single man and worked a lot. I let him know if I was going though, so I get to the pool and dress out and go swimming. There was a few people there, including a boy from my class. I'm driving in and having fun. I sat up on the edge of the pool to fix my flippers I was swimming with. I love flippers, LOL. As I was doing this, a girl younger than me was all like, "Excuse me, but," and pointed at me. I looked down, and in horror my boob had popped out of my swimsuit. I looked up to see the boy from my class just staring at me with his mouth gaped open, practically drooling all over himself. I freaked out and dove into the water and fixed my suit. And pretty much screamed while I was down there too. I couldn't just leave because it was so far back to my house. I would wait for my dad to get off work and come get me, because I'm already exhausted from the ride and swimming all day, so I have to deal with it and just keep swimming. I dove in a few more times and realized that's when my suit would fall off my boobies. Apparently later, a parent that was there complained to my dad and said I should be banned from the pool. TLDR. Awkward preteens' boobs being flashed around at the public pool. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Swimming. Swimming.
In high school, I went on a date with a chick, really more of like a hangout, and we kissed and did some over-the-shirt grabbing and a little squeezing of the butt as we made out. So when asked by friends how this went, I said, "We just messed around." To not be specific or give away any private details, well, this was misinterpreted by those friends who, without my knowledge, told that girl I had told them we had sex. She knew we didn't have sex. She also knew I was still a virgin at the time. So apparently, this pissed this girl off, and she got her friend to help her show up to the school before dawn and post flyers on every single locker in the school that read, "Is a virgin." There were hundreds of them, like I mentioned, on every locker. I was so shocked because I had no knowledge of why this was happening until I found out she had been told that I was apparently bragging to everyone that we had sex. This was definitely not the case. But nevertheless, everyone in the entire school, including staff and teachers, all my coaches, even the damn janitors, knew I was still a virgin. Other friends of mine kept as many of those as they could and lined the inside of their locker with them. I hid in my first class of the day about 20 minutes before the bell to avoid everyone in the hallways. I never lived that down and got shit about it constantly. Long story short, that sucked. But in the end, it did me a massive favor. This rumor about me being a virgin that was definitely a fact started piquing the interest of every upper-class woman that found me attractive to, quote, see who could fuck me first. They literally started a competition to try and seduce me to be the first to pop my man cherry. A pretty decent group of junior and senior girls were jockeying for my jock. I was a sophomore at the time. So, even in my most embarrassing moment, it all worked out for the best. I still to this day wish that chick would have just called me or confronted me about that, instead of just assuming what she was being told were true. Fuck you for that. See you next Tuesday. You're a terrible kisser. Ayy.